My wife cheated with her boss, and now he's claiming half our $300, $0 house and $120, $0 in savings. I never saw it coming, especially after she secretly signed over our property during a supposed business trip. Last month I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am. My wife, Lisa, was always the kind of woman who knew how to keep her secrets well hidden, at least until she didn't. It all started when I noticed small things, little changes that didn't make sense. She'd come home late more often, her phone was glued to her hand, and she'd get defensive if I asked questions. But I brushed it off, convinced she was just stressed with work or trying to balance everything. We had a good life, or so I thought. We owned a $300, $0 house, had about $120, $0 in savings, and things seemed stable, or so I believed. Then came the day I found out the truth. It was a random Thursday. I was in the living room sorting through some bills when I noticed her phone buzzing nonstop. It was her boss, Mark. I'd seen his name pop up before, but I never paid much attention. This time, though, something felt different. I glanced at the screen and my heart sank. There were dozens of messages, flirty texts, suggestive emojis, and even some explicit photos. I couldn't believe it. My wife Lisa was cheating on me with her boss. They'd been sneaking around for months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't say a word that night. I just sat there, staring at the phone, trying to process what I'd just seen. When Lisa came home, she was her usual bitchy self, snapping at me, dismissive, acting like everything was fine. I wanted to confront her then, but I knew I needed to gather more evidence. I couldn't just accuse her based on some texts, so I started digging. I checked her emails, her social media accounts, and even her bank statements. That's when I found out she'd secretly signed over part of our house to Mark during a supposed business trip last month. She forged my signature, and now Mark is claiming half our house and a chunk of our savings. I was furious. How could she do this? How could she lie and cheat like that? I felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her. I'd always believed we were solid, that we had a future. But now everything was falling apart. The house, the money, the marriage, all of it felt like it was crumbling beneath me. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see the red flags. And the worst part, Lisa kept lying, denying everything, calling me paranoid or jealous. But I knew better. I'd seen enough to know she'd been screwing her boss behind my back for months. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for building a life with someone who'd lie straight to my face. I kept replaying the moments I missed, the signs I ignored, and the lies she told to cover her tracks. I was hurt, but I was also furious. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. I didn't know exactly what yet, but I knew I had to take control of the situation before she completely destroyed what was left of my life. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a stomach full of knots. I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had been turned upside down overnight. I needed answers, and I knew I couldn't get them from Lisa alone. I decided to start digging into her phone and computer more thoroughly. I wanted to see if I could find anything else, something concrete that proved she'd been lying to me for months. I snuck into her closet when she was in the shower, grabbed her phone from the bedside table, and started scrolling through her messages. It was like stepping into a different world. There were texts from Mark, obviously, but also deleted messages that I managed to recover using some recovery software I found online. The more I looked, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been playing me for a fool while she was busy screwing her boss, planning to leave me with nothing. I also found emails from her where she was coordinating secret meetings, making arrangements to sign over parts of our property, and even discussing how to hide the money she'd siphoned from our account. I felt sick reading her lies. All those nights she claimed she was working late. She was with Mark, probably in some hotel or her boss's house. The thought of her betraying me like that, lying right to my face, made my blood boil. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to catch her in the act, not just accuse her based on incomplete evidence. So I set up a hidden camera in the living room, just a small one, placed where she wouldn't notice. I figured if she was planning to sneak out or meet Mark again, I'd catch her. I also called a lawyer and started looking into what my options were legally. I wanted to know if I could fight her signatures on the property or at least protect what was mine. That afternoon, Lisa came home early from her business trip. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse, avoiding eye contact. I played it cool, asking her about her trip and her meetings. She was defensive, snapping at me, trying to brush off my questions. I kept pressing, and that's when she finally lost her temper. She told me she was tired of me spying on her, that I was paranoid, jealous, and overreacting. She called me insecure, said I was lucky to have her, and that I didn't deserve her loyalty. That's when I felt the last straw snap. I told her I knew everything about her affair, the property signing, the money. Her face went pale for a second, then she started lying again, saying I was crazy, that she'd never cheat on me, that Mark was just a business associate, nothing more. But I had the proof. The texts, the emails, the bank statements. She could deny all she wanted, but the truth was staring her in the face. The betrayal cut deep, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been blind, trusting her blindly, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd thrown everything away for a quick thrill. I was angry, but I also felt a strange calm. I knew I had to decide what I was going to do next. Part of me wanted to explode, to scream and throw her out right then and there. But I also knew that I needed to think carefully. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage, I was fighting for my house, my savings, my dignity. I couldn't let her walk all over me anymore. I was starting to understand that this wasn't just about infidelity, it was about betrayal on a whole different level. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it without a fight. After that confrontation, I spent the night staring at the ceiling, trying to piece everything together. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Lisa's words, her lies, they all felt like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind for so long, but now it was clear. She'd been sneaking around, signing over our property, squirreling away money, and lying to my face. And for what? Some stupid affair with her boss, Mark. It was sickening. The next morning, I decided I couldn't just sit around anymore. I needed a plan, a way to protect what was mine and to make sure she didn't walk away with everything. First, I called my lawyer. I explained everything, her secret signing of the house, the bank accounts, the affair. The lawyer told me I had a decent shot at contesting the property transfer since she forged my signature. That was the first step. I also needed to gather more evidence, so I set up a few more hidden cameras around the house, in the garage and her office. I wanted to catch her in the act if she tried to do anything else. In the meantime, I started talking to some friends, some of whom knew about Lisa's attitude, her bitchy attitude, her manipulative ways. They told me she was always good at hiding her true colors, that she liked to control everything, especially the money. That was a pattern. She'd always been materialistic, obsessed with status, and now I saw how she used her charm to manipulate me into giving her what she wanted. I realized she'd been planning this for a while, her affair, her property signing, her secret accounts, all of it, and I was just a pawn in her game. I also decided to confront her again, but this time more strategically. I invited her out for coffee, pretending I wanted to talk about us, about fixing things. Over a cup of overpriced latte, I pressed her about her business trip. She tried to brush it off, acting innocent, but I kept pushing. I told her I knew she'd been cheating and that I had proof. Her face twisted with anger. She spat at me, calling me paranoid, insecure, and a jealous loser. She said she loved me but needed to find herself, that I was holding her back. I just sat there, calm but furious. I knew this was her last attempt to deny everything. After she left that day, I started planning my next move. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I contacted a private investigator I'd researched, someone discreet, who specialized in infidelity and property disputes. I wanted to know if she'd been meeting Mark again, if she was planning to run off with him or try to take more of what was ours. The investigator confirmed that she'd been meeting Mark at a hotel last weekend, and she'd even made arrangements to meet him again the following week. That sealed it for me. She was planning to leave, to run away with her affair partner and leave me with nothing. I was hurt beyond words, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time, In months, I was taking control. I knew I had to act fast to protect my assets and to prevent her from screwing me over completely. I drafted a legal notice to contest her signatures on the house, and I started preparing to file for divorce. I also reached out to a financial advisor to understand how to freeze our joint accounts and safeguard what was left. That night, I sat alone in our living room, staring at the documents I'd gathered. My mind kept circling back to the betrayal, the lies, the way she'd manipulated me. But I also felt stronger. I realized I'd been naive, trusting her blindly, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a selfish, dishonest woman who'd done everything she could to take what wasn't hers. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I was done being a victim. From now on, I was going to fight for what's mine and get my life back. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I had lawyers, investigators, and financial advisors all working behind the scenes, but I was still trying to process everything emotionally. It felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. I kept replaying all the moments I missed, all the signs I ignored. I trusted Lisa. I'd built this life with her, our house, our savings, our future, and she'd thrown it all away for a quick affair and some greedy schemes. Honestly, I felt like a fool, but I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it without consequences. One afternoon, I decided to confront her again, but this time I was prepared. I told her I knew about her meetings with Mark, about the property signing, everything. She tried to deny it, of course. She played the victim, saying I was crazy, paranoid, that I was ruining her reputation. But I had the evidence, screenshots of the texts, bank statements, the legal notices. I pushed her hard, watching her squirm. She finally snapped and started yelling that I was controlling, that I didn't understand her, that she deserved better than a guy who was so insecure he'd stalk her. It was then I saw her true colors, bitchy, manipulative, and completely self-absorbed. She told me she was tired of my accusations, that she was done with this whole mess, and that she was going to leave regardless. That's when I realized I had to act fast. I couldn't let her run off with Mark or try to claim more of our assets. I had my lawyer draft an emergency injunction to freeze our joint accounts and prevent her from signing anything else. I also filed paperwork to contest her signatures on the house, showing she'd forged my name. Meanwhile, I kept gathering evidence, just in case I needed it in court. I also hired a private investigator again, this time to follow her, see if she was planning to leave town or meet Mark again. It turned out she'd been making arrangements to pack her bags, even talking about moving out of state. That was the final straw. I couldn't let her do this. I needed to protect what was mine, and I needed to do it fast. While all this was happening, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger, disappointment, and sadness. I'd trusted her, loved her, and now I was learning she'd been lying to my face for months. The betrayal hurt more than I can put into words, but at the same time, I was starting to feel a strange sense of relief. I knew I was taking control of my life again, even if it was through legal battles and emotional pain. I realized that staying with her would only mean more lies and more heartbreak, and I refused to let her ruin me anymore. That evening, I sat alone in my home, staring at the legal documents spread out on the table. I thought about everything I'd lost, my trust, my stability, the woman I thought I knew. But I also thought about what I still had, my house, my savings, my dignity. It was clear that Lisa had no intention of stopping her schemes. Her bitchy attitude, her manipulative lies, they all pointed to her being a master at deception. I knew I had to stay strong and see this through to the end. If I was going to come out of this with something intact, I had to be relentless. I wasn't going to let her destroy me without a fight. The legal process moved faster than I expected. I had my lawyer file the necessary motions to contest the property transfer, and the court granted a temporary restraining order to prevent Lisa from signing anything further or moving any money out of our joint accounts. It was a small victory, but it felt like a huge weight off my shoulders. Still, I knew the fight wasn't over. Lisa was stubborn, and she had a way of twisting everything to her advantage. In the meantime, the investigation into her meetings with Mark revealed even more disturbing details. The private investigator caught her meeting Mark at a hotel last weekend, confirming she was actively planning to run off with him. She'd been talking about starting fresh somewhere out of state, and I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to stop her. I also discovered she'd been secretly funneling money into accounts under her maiden name, money she'd hidden from me for months. It was clear she'd been planning her escape for a while. One night, I sat her down again, this time with everything laid out on the table. I told her I knew about her affair, the property signing, and her plans to leave. I showed her the evidence I'd gathered, including the hotel footage and the bank statements. Her face twisted in anger and frustration. She called me paranoid, accused me of ruining her life, and then, in true Lisa fashion, started crying and throwing a fit. She said I was just jealous and insecure, that she deserved happiness and that I was holding her back. She insisted she loved me but needed to find herself, and that she was leaving no matter what. That was the final straw. I knew I couldn't keep enabling her manipulations. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I'd be fighting to keep our house, our savings, and my rights. I explained that her signature for the property was invalid, and I was going to contest it all legally. I also told her I'd be calling the police if she tried to take any of the money or leave without my consent. She scoffed, calling me a controlling asshole, and stormed out of the house, yelling that I'd regret this. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. I'd finally taken control, but I also knew the worst was yet to come. Lisa was not someone who accepted defeat easily. She'd always been bitchy and manipulative, and I had a feeling she'd fight me every step of the way. I double-checked all my legal documents, made copies of the evidence, and prepared myself for the upcoming court battles. I also contacted a therapist to help me deal with the emotional fallout. I'd been through so much in just a few days: hurt, betrayal, anger, and I needed to keep my head clear. As I sat there, I realized how naive I'd been. I'd trusted her blindly, believed in our marriage, and never thought she'd betray me like this. Now I understood that some people are only out for themselves, no matter who they hurt. Lisa's bitchy attitude, her lies, her schemes, they all pointed to someone who'd do anything to get what she wanted. And I was the one left picking up the pieces. But I also knew I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I was determined to fight for what's mine, even if it meant going through hell and back. I owed myself that much. The court date finally arrived after weeks of back-and-forth legal battles, and I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and determination. I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. She was the kind of woman who thrived on manipulation and control, but I had everything in order. My lawyer laid out the evidence: forged signatures, hidden bank accounts, her meetings with Mark, and her secret plans to leave. I was prepared to fight for our house, for my savings, and to put an end to her lies once and for all. When the judge called the case, Lisa showed up with her usual bitchy smirk, trying to act innocent. But her facade cracked when the evidence was presented. Her face turned pale as the court scrutinized the documents, the hotel footage, and the bank statements. It was clear she'd been lying all along. The judge ordered her to return the signed-over property documents, invalidating her signatures. The court also granted me full control of our savings and ordered her to pay back the money she'd hidden. It was a victory, but not without its costs. The emotional toll had been heavy. I felt drained, betrayed, and angry, so angry I wanted to scream. Lisa's reaction was typical. She called the court system unfair, accused me of trying to ruin her, and stormed out of the courtroom cursing. I watched her leave, knowing that she'd probably try to fight me in other ways, but I also knew I had won the battle for now. In the weeks that followed, I moved out of the house. I found a small apartment not far from our former home and started rebuilding my life. The house was now legally mine again, and I was working with a financial advisor to ensure Lisa couldn't siphon off any more of our savings. I also cut ties with her entirely. No more calls, no more texts, no more lies. I realized I'd been holding on to the hope that things could somehow be fixed, but deep down, I knew I deserved better than someone who'd betray me like that. Looking back, I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can come from the most unexpected places. I learned to pay attention to the red flags, to trust my instincts, and to stand up for myself. Most of all, I learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your dignity and moving forward. Lisa's bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they all showed her true character. I'm glad I fought for what was mine because now I can finally breathe again, free from the weight of her betrayal. This experience has left scars, but it's also made me stronger. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let anyone take advantage of me like that again. I've learned to be cautious, to stand firm, and to trust myself more. If you're ever in a similar situation, I'd say this: don't wait too long to fight for yourself. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to take back what's yours and refuse to be a victim anymore.